I'm checking troubleshoot, moving down the line. I got a heartbeat, but that's okay. Trouble man, don't even know when. I got a heartbeat, I've been for real. Gonna keep moving, never fall down. I got a heartbeat, I won't get down. There's only three that's sure. Texas got trouble. There's an old. All right. Hello. This is the Legends of Inside Sports, and I'm your host, Harold Bell. We got a very special show today. We're going to be talking to an old friend down in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Would you believe it? Down in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Well, I recently read where someone said, I don't do king celebrations because I think we're at the point where we do not need to celebrate as much as we need to engage. I could not have said it better myself. In February 2019, there will be the annual celebration of Black History Month. I don't do celebrations of Black History Month because I think we are at a point where we need to do celebrate as much as we should have, but we need to teach Black history, and so instead of celebrating it, we need to teach Black history to our young people so they know what they have to celebrate. Now, with that thought, I've teamed up with my longtime friend to bring to Washington, D.C., the Johnson exhibit. For those of you who don't know who Jack Johnson was, let me explain. He was the first black heavyweight champion of the world. Against all odds, he won the title in 1908 with a knockout of Tommy Burns in Sydney, Australia. He held the title until 1915. He was born in Galveston, Texas, and was killed in an automobile accident on a road in Franklinton, North Carolina in 1946. The Jack Johnson exhibit is now housed in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Let me tell you a little about the amazing boxing career of my guest. He is the youngest trainer to ever train in the corner of the great Mike Tyson. He was 21 years old when promoter Don King assigned him to work in the corner of Iron Mike. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame and the New Jersey Boxing Hall of Fame in 2018. When you think of trainers of champions, the first one you think of is Angelo Dundee and Emmanuel Stewart. But now you can add another name to that group. My special guest here on the Legends of Inside Sports, Mr. Aaron Snowell. How you doing, Aaron?
All right, Al.
What's happening, man?
Yeah, what a introduction, um, about me. But I want to say that our exhibit started in Franklin County, North Carolina, where Jack Johnson lost his life.
Right.
We received a film grant to bring his life and his history, make it aware, and that's where it got started at. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a stressful exhibit.
Yeah.
We take it around to the Boxing Hall of Fame, like the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame there, with the Jack Johnson exhibit. We show out for the last 2 years. This will be the third year coming up, from June 21st to the 23rd, when they bring their class of boxers that they're inducting into the Hall of Fame. And also the National Boxing Hall of Fame that's located in California, where I was inducted at. They're going to induct Jack Johnson in April 28th, and we're going to be there, and the exhibit's going to be there. So it's a travel exhibit, but we use the exhibit, like you said, Jack Johnson, the first African American heavyweight champion. What significance does Jack Johnson play, and why the exhibit? Let me tell you what Elijah Muhammad told me. through Muhammad Ali, is that history and culture of all our studies are best attractive, best qualified to reward a person's research, as it takes upon the springs and motives that spell the destiny of the human being. And I say this, uh, boxing has a great history of discrimination. You know, boxing at one time was just for the elite, the rich, rich and famous of England, of Europe, around the world, where they used to bring slaves over into black slaves into England and to have them fight. There was some of them that fought and won their freedom through fighting over in England, won their freedom. Some of the pioneers, but boxing had a color line, and it started with the first champion in America named John L. Sullivan. John L. Sullivan is the one, when he won the heavyweight title, which was the most prestigious title in sports around the world, was to be the heavyweight champion of the world. And John L. Sullivan said that he wasn't going to fight no darkies, no niggas. Plain and simple. Said it like that. He wasn't going to do it, and he didn't do it. And the rest of them, after John L. Sullivan, followed suit, including Jeffries. And we'll get back to Jeffries a little later. But when Tommy Burns had won the title, the heavyweight championship of the world, who was from Canada, he said that he would take on all comers. Now, you have to remember, during this period of time, it was segregation happening. Blacks had their own community and whites had their own community. Well, in the black community, we had our own boxing league, just like we had our own baseball league, our own basketball league. And you had great fighters, such as Jack Johnson, Sam Langford. These great champions, they fought in the colored league. And Jack Johnson was champion of the colored league at the time, because he beat all of them guys, heavyweights in the black line. But when Tommy Burns said that he would take on all comers, Jack Johnson took off and chased them around the world and finally caught up with them over in Australia. And he had to leave out of the country in order to get opportunity, Brother Bell.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me add something. Number one, Joe Gans was the first black champion, period, from Baltimore, Maryland, and the black athlete was the first professional athlete. Now, where did he get his start from? He got his start on the plantations when the white slave owners were looking for. They had too much leisure time on their hands because the slaves were doing all the work. One slave owner saw two blacks racing back to the plantation, and he got this idea: hey, why not have my blacks race against John's black down at the plantation? And so that's how it started. They started running against each other. They started winning to the horse racing because nobody on the plantation knew the horses and the ways of thoroughbreds better than the slaves. So they started the horse racing, and blacks they dominated the Kentucky Derby. The winners, almost majority of the races were black. And this is how all it started. Then, of course, they may have gone to England or wherever you say, but it all started on the plantation. A lot of blacks won their freedom, lost their lives because they lost it by losing a race or lost it in the boxing ring. The black athlete was the first professional athlete, and it started all on the plantation. You take it.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. It has to deal with the plantation. Don't forget, Jack Johnson's mother and father were in slavery.
Probably so. Probably so.
He learned how to box from a horse trainer. He was
Mm-hmm.
keeping horses
Mm-hmm.
in Gans, Texas, his family. But also, what helped Jack Johnson, what God blessed him with, was that his mother used to take care of the white children.
Mm-hmm.
However, she would let her children play with the white children she was taking care of. So, in the scheme of things, the way God had it planned for the bigger picture for which Jack Johnson was going to be a part of this great heavyweight championship of the world, he was able to deal in a white world because the way his mother treated him. You know, they said Jack Johnson's mother used to sit Jack Johnson down with the white children and feed him Oreo cookies
Mm-hmm.
and tell him that there was nobody bigger or better than you are.
Mm-hmm.
And with thought in mind, Jack Johnson loved his mother very, very much. Now, there's a misconception about Jack Johnson, and we'll get to this a little later.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Johnson, they thought Jack Johnson only married white women. That's a lie. His first wife was black. They moved and traveled along like Jack Johnson was learning his trade about boxing, where he traveled to New York, Pittsburgh, and those places. And on his way back, going through Denver, he and his wife had gotten into it because she was talking to him about the way he acted, conduct, and all of that. So Jack Johnson said he had to leave her behind.
Mm-hmm.
And left her, he divorced her, and then later on, married some white women. So when Jack Johnson was and you're right, Joe Gans was the first the champion who was African American. However, the heavyweight champion of the world was the most prestigious title and still is in sports. Is because when you held the heavyweight championship of the world, that meant the whole world. And that's what Jack Johnson did. Jack Johnson traveled and fought around the whole world. He just didn't fight in the United States. And he became a big draw when he fought. When he fought Burns to win the heavyweight championship of the world, is that there was a noted writer who wrote for the New York Times and the LA Times named Jack London.
Mm-hmm.
And keep his name in mind.
I know Jack London. I know the story. Go ahead. I'm listening, brother. You teaching. Go ahead.
While he was at ringside typing, he couldn't stomach
Mm-hmm.
man or African American beating up on a white man the way Jack Johnson was doing Tommy Burns. He would hit him, talk to him. Come on, Tommy, that's what you got, a beating up thing. That's all you got, Tommy boy. Come on, Tommy boy. And he was laughing, smiling, and talking this and putting punches on him, and then finally ended with an uppercut. And when he wrote and sent a telegram, it sent shockwaves around the world, but he said someone has to knock the smile off this nigga's face. And that sent shockwaves around the world, and they were trying to get all of these fighters that were in the past who were heavyweight champions to fight. And London said there was only one that could probably beat Jack Johnson, and that was Jim Jeffries, and that was known the fight between them two as the fight of the century. But go ahead, Brother Beth.
No, that's good. That's great. That's lesson 101 in boxing. But also what Jack Johnson had that today's athlete don't have, even though he was as talented as he was, he had courage. It took courage to become the heavyweight champion, to fight in different time zones in different cities or travel around the world. He had to travel. He could not get a championship fight in America. He had to go to Sydney, Australia, to win his first championship. That's what I love about Jack Johnson. That he was a man that stood up, man. He stood up. He believed in himself. You know, Frank Sinatra was not the first one to do it his way. Jack Johnson did it his way, and I think that he should be an inspiration, man, to all of today's athletes. But they don't have the courage that this brother had. It took courage for Jack Johnson to move along the way that he did. One of the things I want to do, Aaron, I want joining us on today's show. We're gonna listen to my man Bert Sugar as Bert Sugar talks about the top fighters of all time, and he mentions Jack Johnson in that conversation. So bear with me while I go to the tape, as they say. Go to the tape. I want you to hear Jack. I want you to hear Bert on as he talks about the top
now puts up the money.
fighters of all time. Let me see if I can pull it up.
About after privacy, don't want it violated. Irving Johnson is a special case. He is using it to his and society's good. There might be some people out there that don't want to hear about this. So you've got to balance these two equities. What is societal good? What is individual rights? I'm not sure Bob Aaron isn't grandstanding, but you're going to come to a point where this scourge is going to have to be seen, and boxing, as you know, has closer contact than any other sport, and it might have to be done.
Right. You know, Bert, I think definitely all professional sports should have mandatory AIDS testing, because most contact sports, there's blood, and anybody's blood may come from any time, basketball, football, baseball. So it's something that we really want to not hockey, definitely not hockey. There's very little blood in hockey, is there?
As Rodney Dangerfield said once, he went to a fight in a hockey game broke out.
Yeah, how about that? Well, what we're going to do here, we're going to take a break, and I'm going to come back to talk with Bert about the greatest fighters of all time right after this message.
Well, that's something kind of special with
hold up, Aaron. Here we go. He's going to talk about the fight. Hold on.
Who was or is the greatest fighter of all time? If you had your last money in your pocket,
which I do.
You do. And of course, it was between going to see the greatest fighter of all time and eating. Which would you do, and who would that fighter be, and why?
Yes, no, and maybe.
Okay.
No, I would go to see the greatest fighter of all time. I wrote a book called The 100 Greatest Fighters of All Time. I rated them pound for pound. I squished them together. I wrote it at a bar. You can say anything you want. They all fought at their primes, and I looked at them in a prism. I really looked at them through the bottom of a glass to pick them. And my greatest fighter of all time was born Walker Smith in 1920 in Detroit, Michigan, better known as Sugar Ray Robinson. The Sugar Man could do it all. It's the only man I ever saw throw a knockout punch going backwards. Second greatest fighter, Henry Armstrong, held 3 titles at the same time. Won in 1 year 21 of 21 fights, 20 by knockout, which ain't all bad. Third greatest of all time, you have to really go back. A guy named Harry Grett, the only man to beat Gene Tunney. Then I got to the heavyweights with Dempsey and Lewis. And unfortunately, I didn't get to the man who calls himself the greatest till number 10, Muhammad Ali. Great man. I mean, but how can you tell when you do gradations? You weren't saying they were less great. You were just putting them in the slots. And I just thought, Ali, who admitted he emulated Sugar Ray Robinson's moves, I couldn't move him above the man he was imitating.
But what about, we're talking about heavyweights, and of course, Muhammad Ali imitating Sugar Ray Robinson. What about Jack Johnson? He took a lot of his style and characteristics from Jack Johnson too, didn't he?
Yes, but Johnson, you have to understand, was probably the greatest defensive fighter in the history of boxing. He could catch any punch, but he rarely hit you until you hit him. Jack Johnson was a great, great fighter, but he rarely threw punches with bad intentions until you hit him. He was satisfied all day just to play backstop. He just caught punches. You couldn't hit him. But if you did, you were in trouble. Jack Johnson was, Ali's style was less Johnson's than it was Robinson's. He used speed. And what the problem was that Ali so fertilized the field that for years thereafter you saw kids coming up trying to imitate Muhammad Ali, but they didn't have the speed. And if you look at Ali's style, it's all speed oriented. He leans back from punches, he pulls away, he moves. And if they weren't that fast, they were going to get clocked. And a lot of the kids did because Ali could pull it off. They couldn't.
Okay, Aaron, you got it.
Well, Bert Sugar's hats off to him, may he rest in peace, is that, let me tell you what Mr. Fletcher said, who started and founded the Ring magazine, who Bert Sugar later became editor-in-chief of that magazine that Fletcher started. Fletcher seen heavyweight champions before Jack Johnson and up to Muhammad Ali. He's seen them all. And what he said, Nat Fletcher, he said that Jack Johnson, bar none, was the best of them all. And here's why. He said Jack Johnson created a different style, offensively, defensively, lateral movement, and could punch second to none. All right? And also, Ray Robinson had the time to sit down when he was a young man and talk with Jack Johnson. I got the pictures. Byrne, who was Joe Lewis's trainer, he said that Jack Johnson was the best of his era. They didn't like the way he went about his ways, but he said he was simply great. All right? And you can't take nothing from the Brown Bomber, because in his time, he was something kind of special. Ray Robinson was definitely something kind of special, but it shows how the technique, if you watch old films, it shows how the sport had progress as time went on with offense, defense, slipping and sliding, boxing and weaving, coming forward, counter punching, leading off punching. And by the time Muhammad Ali, who had heard about Jack Johnson, who told me about Jack Johnson, Ali loved Jack Johnson for all that he did and all that he stood for. Don King, who we just interviewed about Jack Johnson and Muhammad Ali when he got inducted into the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame, right after he got his award, here's what he told me. He said that Jack Johnson was one of a kind and Muhammad Ali was one of a kind. But both of them stood up for the rights of the people. In plain and simple, that's what it's all about, people power.
Right. We're talking to, of course, Ern Snowell. Ern is the coordinator and the host of the Jack Johnson tour that's going around the country and will be coming into Washington, D.C. on February 15th and 16th. And I want all you folks to get your act together because this is going to be an outstanding exhibit. Its first stop will be in Alexandria, Virginia. And of course, that's at the Charles Houston community center out there in Alexandria. You can call out there and get the exact times and dates at the Charles Houston Rec Center. And then on Saturday, we'll be coming into Washington, D.C. From 12 until 3 at the Ridge Road Rec Center in Southeast D.C. Or you can call the Ridge Road Rec Center and find out those times. But it's from 12 until 3 on Saturday. And then we will close out the day at the Dream Center on 28th and Q Street, Southeast, which is where the little White House is. And we'll be there from 5 until 8. So we are looking forward to having Ern come in here. I think it's going to be a great, great exhibit. And I'm just honored that he's allowing me to host it with Kids in Trouble, my nonprofit organization. And I want all of you to come out. Once again, we're talking to my man, Ern Snowell. And remember this, that, this is history that we should be made aware of. This is history for our young people. This is our history, folks. So come out and support, okay? I want you to listen to this message. Okay, that was the greatest Muhammad Ali promoting inside sports, something you will never hear anywhere else. Him promoting anybody's sports show or television show. Yeah, that's my man. Okay, Aaron, take it from there.
Well, Brother Hal, look, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on your show, Inside Sports. And also, we want to thank you, myself, Brother Yusuf, and Will Williams, and the rest of my crew for your invitation to come in the nation's capital and the surrounding area. This means something to us that we can bring it to the people. And we want all the former boxers and champions and current fighters come out and support us so they can take pictures with the exhibit. Around the world, this is what we do with all of Fame. But we always say this here is that dreams only come true if you believe that they do. You have to dream a little while and make it happen. And this is about a dream come true for us to come into the nation's capital. Jack Johnson just recently got a pardon, a full pardon from President Donald Trump. I am WBC ambassador for goodwill that we take around the country for all different types of campaigns. But boxing has no future without the children.
That's right.
You're working with children, Brother. We have to come and support you with these children. Mm-hmm. And also, different mosques and things around churches around the area. We want them to bring their youth studies, their kids to this event because they're going to learn something. Jack Johnson was a traveling man. He was Master Mason. And he got that story in his travels in the 1900s when most people of color didn't even think about being in the Masonic Lodge. And he was also a preacher, someone who believed in God. And without God in mind, nothing's possible. So we understand why he was able to do these impossible tasks is because with God in mind, all things are possible. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you something. To learn this about that, he was in jail. Yes, he went to jail for what was known as the Mann Act. That act was to take women across state lines to do immoral things to them. to be his wife, and it happened from first to top. The FBI have followed Jack Johnson, and they say he paid for the ticket, and so on these charges. He got found guilty in court where the FBI had set up different witnesses from the street to testify against him. So Jack Johnson said that he would admit his crime if he was guilty, but he wasn't guilty, so he had to take off. Since he was into baseball, he posed as a Negro baseball player in Canada, and in those places. But he couldn't smoke in because he got 50 feet to short, and he did his time in jail when he was in jail. He did two things. He was in jail. So that's something mindset and intelligence get a back and make it up. For most people who drive a horse and buggy, he also drove, the taxi car. His dad was, fancy horse and buggy car, black man, those buggies, it turned the car.
Mm-hmm.
He sold his patent rights to Ford, and the design of his cars, the patent cars, one of the first ones to drive some of them fancy cars that a black man invented. So, you have to look in at all of these things, but Jack Johnson did. Now, he be the first race car driver. When Jeffrey just fight the Saints when he got out the ring, James Jeffrey Bush challenged him to Oakville. Jack Johnson to a race, and he accepted. At Ruckus Bay, not Ruckus Bay, in Brooklyn, he raced Oakville and Eastern lost. But the fact that he did it, before the race took place on 3 days, the organizer would certify the race. His car driving, they said if Bernie Oakville takes Jack Johnson, that they was going to give him of all his fights. But they raced. Jack Johnson didn't lose by much. And what he said was, if it wasn't for Oakville going around the curves so fast, like a madman, he said I would have beat him. No curves like that. It was a curve that got him and took his life in Franklinton, North Carolina. So these things that we're going to be looking at for all in the exhibits, and these are things that we talk about. What's also part of it is that we have the FBI file. You can see at the people of how they perceive that basketball on the world.
Well, Ern, thank you so much for being a part of the Legends of Inside Sports, and we're looking forward to hosting the Jack Johnson Tour on the 15th and 16th of February. And the key to the whole thing, Ern, is networking. I mean, you and I go back, we go way back. So it's nothing, this is nothing phenomenal. This is what we have been doing for a long, long time. When I was making my way as a sports talk show host out there in Las Vegas, it was guys like you and Carl King made sure that I had a way to get into the fights when I when I wasn't getting along with our main man Don King. So all of this goes way back, man. So I am honored to be a part of this, and I think it was going to be well received here in the nation's capital, man. So until next time, we got a couple of weeks to go, But looking forward to seeing you guys and the whole group, man, on the 15th and 16th.
Well, you're something kind of special in your own right, brother. You know, you reach one, you teach one. You know, with the radio show, you know, it was pioneers like you who inspired me to do my radio show. You were black man, African American man out there. You didn't see much of them on the sports circuit or the news circuit out there with big events and big shows, but you were always there. Your face was always present,
Yeah,
and
well,
you were the type of person who was a mentor, a teacher to a whole lot of brothers.
yeah,
You
well,
know, those that would take the time to listen to you. They seem to grasp it and go on to bigger and better things.
yeah,
And that's what it's all about. To reach one, you keep one.
that's right.
You
Aaron,
know,
you know, it was the two brothers that stood out there was me and Howie Evans, while everybody else was running and ducking and calling down all kinds of names, you know, that he shouldn't be in the position that he was. It was Howie Evans and myself that stood up. And I got on Don's case because it was too many whites in the PR office that wasn't giving us a fair shake. And I got on Don so bad, I was the one that encouraged him to hire Howie Evans as the PR man. He was I knew Howie wasn't gonna last that long. I told him, I said, she ain't gonna last that long because you ain't gonna put up with Don's idiosyncrasies. And but yeah, that was a great experience, and it helped me to grow to where I am today. And I got to thank that experience in Las Vegas and being with my man, my brother Muhammad Ali and Rahman, who had my back, was the champion. So yeah, I got a lot of help, man, and I have not forgotten that, and that's why I always reach back. See,
yeah.
success didn't change me. Success didn't change me.
Yeah, right. Well, let me tell you what Muhammad Ali told me when I was a young man about Don King. He said, stick with Don King because he'll make you rich. The other people that are around, they ain't into that. He said, you have to help a brother in spite of, not because of. You help him because he's out there trying. He's doing it. He said the rest of them ain't like that. And we know he was out there, in spite of his idiosyncrasies that he has. He made a lot of young men, young black men, and Hispanics rich, and gave all of them opportunity. And opportunity, you have to make the best of opportunity. Things just don't happen. And that's what he did. He opened the door for a lot of markets when it comes to boxing. And we were all a part of that. How you were, brother Bell, you were a part of that. In spite of a lot of times, Don get in different debates. But when you put down to the pen and the paper, you seen what was happening. You told it like it really was. You didn't sugarcoat nothing, and you still don't sugarcoat nothing. You believe in freedom, justice, and equality, and that's the ongoing fight. And you believe in fighting, and so do I. So that's why you're a brother, and that's why I love you.
I love you too, Aaron. Looking forward to you coming into DC, man, and you guys be safe until then, man.
Yeah, we
Okay.
will, brother. As always, thank you.
Okay, my man, signing off. This has been the Legends of Inside Sports. I'm Harold Bell, and I want you to remember that every black face you see is not your brother, and every white face is not your enemy. Until next time, you can color me gone.